Why did the pharaohs of ancient Egypt marry their own mother and sister? We all know that history is deep and holds a lot of mystery, and ancient Egypt is no exception. Aside from mummies, the ever-famous pyramids and scholastic writings, ancient Egypt is also pretty well known for its interesting royal family tree. I guess it's no secret that incest and inbreeding were common during this time, and the discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb proved that there's more truth to these juicy allegations. But why did pharaohs opt to marry their blood? Behind the natural greed to keep the power within the family, people are still confused about the marriage between mother and son and brother and sister. Is there a much deeper reason to commit such an act? Let's find out. Welcome to Crazy Histories, where we bring you the craziest and weirdest facts from human history. Some of the things discussed in this video may be offensive or disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Pharaohs of Ancient Egypt. History teaches us that pharaohs ruled ancient Egypt. But aside from their role as the nation's leaders, their existence carries a bigger weight than just sitting on their throne all day. They are paramount figures during this period, so important that they have been deemed the middle intermediary between the people and the gods. Because of this, pharaohs are considered supreme beings and are feared by many. Their status is equivalent to that of gods such as Horus and Osiris, with titles such as the Son of Re being used too. Their value does not fade away even after death. In fact, they are still cared for after they leave this earth. Whenever a pharaoh passes away, his death is remembered through huge statues with a death mask specifically created for each one so that he can recognize his body and return to it safely in the afterlife. Even the construction of their tomb is a major event, and as important as any task related to a ruler like a pharaoh. Because they wanted to be reborn victorious, excellent care and detail were dedicated to creating and building these structures. However, despite the prestige and respect, there is a dark secret behind the crown. Well, maybe not much of a secret, since there are records that reveal how incestuous marriages were fairly common in ancient Egypt. It's so widespread that countless pharaohs reportedly chose to marry their mothers or sisters. Despite all of this, some texts do not agree with this. Because of this, no one knows the true number of incestuous marriages during ancient Egypt, but that does not mean they didn't exist. Amid the dilemma, one thing is sure: pharaohs preferred to marry their blood to keep the line of heirs purely from their lineage, but sometimes it doesn't work in their favor. Incestuous marriages in ancient Egypt. The record shows that there's always something dark behind every empire that rises and falls during ancient times. For Egypt, there's this rumor going around the empire that suggests that incestuous marriages are the norm, but not everyone is convinced. A specialist in Egyptology named Bassam al-Shamma stated that incestuous weddings were not a frequent occurrence among ancient Egypt's common population because they were unknown to them. Shamma made it clear that incestuous marriages only happened in unusual and infrequent circumstances, particularly in one class. Specifically, Shamma is referring to the ruling class. According to him, the monarch would occasionally wed his sister, daughter, or other family members to keep his kingdom. In addition to this, archaeologist Ahmed Amer claimed that incestuous unions were unusual in ancient Egypt, and that the main reason a king would often wed his sister was to protect the kingdom and royal blood. They also believed that the monarch and queen were gods, and that it was common for a god to wed his sister. This confirms that the relationship between blood-related nobles happened for important reasons. Historians first suggest that pharaohs most likely engaged their kin because of royal inbreeding. So, what exactly is royal inbreeding? Also known as royal intermarriage, the practice of members of ruling dynasties marrying into other ruling families is known as royal intermarriage. As part of strategic diplomacy for the sake of national interest, it was more frequently done in the past. Although it has occasionally been enforced by law for those of royal birth, it has more frequently been a matter of political policy or tradition under monarchs. Inbreeding is a much more straightforward one. In the case of pharaohs, they decide to marry a close relative to keep the power within themselves. Due to inbreeding in almost every dynasty in ancient Egypt, royal families were required to marry among themselves. In addition to marrying their brothers and sisters, pharaohs sometimes engaged in double niece unions, in which a man wed a girl whose parents were his brother and sister. This practice is also seen as valid due to the ancient belief that the god Osiris married his sister Isis to keep their bloodline pure. While we might think that these actions are accepted, they're much more complex than just following beliefs. It seems like incestuous activities are not limited to the royal family. A mayor said that the king had the authority to take additional spouses who were not rightful heiresses to the kingdom along with his legal wife. This is possible because, just like King Tutankhamun, the creator of the 6th dynasty, had 2 spouses. King Khufu had many wives, and King Amenhotep III of the 18th dynasty had 4 wives. Although polygamy was legal, it was only practiced by the royal family and the nobility. But because of economic restraints, not everyone can engage in such practices. According to Paul John Franson, there is no difference between what is licit among royalty and in the public in a society such as ancient Egypt, where nuclear family incest is practiced. There were incestuous connections between members of non-royal nuclear families in Persia and ancient Egypt as well. Basically, this means the practice of incestuous relationships within nuclear families may have been motivated by factors other than just propaganda. Most likely, this was done for financial reasons, since endogamy might have been a way to avoid paying the bride price or to maintain the inheritance undivided. But since average citizens during that period weren't as wealthy as nobles who can support 2 or more wives, polygamy and marriages within the family are only possible for the ruling class who can afford to do so. While there was no solid proof aside from records and historical text, the discovery and investigation of King Tut's tomb started another debate about whether there was truth to these long-standing allegations. King Tutankhamun's tomb. Everything started in 2010 after an Egyptian and German study team examined 11 mummies from the 18th dynasty that were connected to Tutankhamun. DNA was extracted from bone tissues, and they were able to identify the mummies, ascertain the precise relationships between members of the royal family, and make assumptions about potential illnesses and causes of death. This breakthrough research proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that Tutankhamun was the offspring of Akhenaten and Akhenaten's sister, who were relatives in the 1st degree. Of course, there were consequences. This relationship between the brother and sister was deemed to be the reason behind King Tut's disabilities. After discovering his tomb, it was discovered that Pharaoh Tutankhamun had clubfoot, also known as the congenital equinovarus deformity. The pharaoh suffered from bone necrosis for a considerable amount of time, which may have contributed to his walking impairment. In addition, the authors addressed Akhenaten's androgynous appearance. To give you a brief background, Pharaoh Akhenaten was everything but manly. Records revealed that he was described as feminine, which puzzled experts for a very long time. After the discovery of King Tut's tomb, more answers came to the surface, and there's a big chance that Akhenaten's unusual appearance is also a result of an incestuous relationship within the family. Having examined photographs of Akhenaten, Yale University doctor Dr. Erwin Braverman has a novel theory about the images he saw. According to Braverman, the feminine appearance resulted from a genetic abnormality that led to the pharaoh's body converting more male hormones to female hormones than it should have. Also, due to a disorder in which the skull bones merge at a young age, Akhenaten's head was deformed. Explaining more about his discovery, Braverman elaborated, saying, "The pharaoh had an androgynous appearance. He had a female physique with wide hips and breasts, but he was male, and he was fertile, and he had 6 daughters. But nevertheless, he looked like he had a female physique." As bizarre as it can be, the discovery and research of King Tut's tomb and mummy opened countless possibilities for explanations about how marriage worked in ancient Egypt. While nothing is certain, the data collected from this study points in one direction. Incestuous marriages did happen in ancient Egypt, and as a result, King Tut was born with abnormalities that he still possesses thousands of years later. What do you guys think? Do you believe in incestuous marriages during ancient Egypt? Let us know in the comments below. Also, if you like this type of video, be sure to subscribe and click to get notifications for more crazy history.